All right, welcome to the Gaming Lounge podcast, episode 10. Once again, I'm your host, Sebastian, and I'm joined by Dory. How you doing, Dory?
Hello, I am back from a long couple of days of watching Graps in Philly, Graps being wrestling. So I'm tired, but I'm here to do a podcast, as is my God-given right as an American.
So in honor of hitting double digits, our 10th episode, we figured to do a top 10 games of all time, our top 10 games of all time. And this is not easy to do. I have many favorite games, but I am pretty happy with this list overall. How about you, Dory?
Yeah, so this is a weird list for me to make because I rediscovered my love of gaming in 2017 and have discovered a lot of new genres that I wasn't into when I was younger. I could definitely list games that I loved when I was younger, like the Spider-Man 2000 game, or Majora's Mask, or Spyro, or whatever. Games that I played when I was a kid that I loved. But the problem is a lot of those games I haven't played in years and years and years since I was a kid, basically. And I sincerely doubt a lot of them have held up. For me, we're talking about our top 10 games of all time. That doesn't just mean a game that's close to my heart, which definitely would be three of those three games. But also games that are, for me, 5 out of 5s. And I haven't really started looking at games since the last 7 years, I want to say, since I started playing again in 2017 as a basically full-grown adult. So what I'm trying to say basically is a lot of these are going to be newer games. Just because I don't have older games doesn't mean I didn't play them. But for me, unless I've gone back and actually played them and checked that they hold up to my expectations of like what should be in a top 10, I don't personally feel comfortable. But everybody has their own top 10 list. That's just for me personally. But yeah, so I'm excited. I think I've got a pretty good list. I was able to use GG and a couple other lists. I've been making my top 10 lists since 2020, so I've at least got 4 years of data for that. And I remember some of the games I played, but the 3 years before that as well. So yeah, a lot of my games are going to be newer, but it doesn't mean I did grow up playing PS1 and 64. Heck, I even grew up playing the Genesis. So,
all right. So you want to start with your number 10?
Sure. This is one of my childhood favorites, actually. And I did go back and play it, but I played it in a very unique way. So this is Pokemon HeartGold at my number 10. I think this is an incredible game, still probably not to be topped by anything Pokemon has done since. It's everything you love about Pokemon Gold, which I adored as a child, but with better graphics, better interface, more quality of life improvements. Now, when I played it again, I played it. Number one, I definitely played it completely legally. Don't at me. But number two, I did it under Nuzlocke rules, which was brutal. But it was a lot of fun. For those who don't know, Nuzlocke rules is basically, I'll sum it up. There's a lot of variants, but the basic rules are you can only catch one Pokemon per area. If your Pokemon faints, that's it. Some people add on varying rules on top of those, but those two are like the main rules. And it basically turns Pokemon into a much more difficult game. When you team wipe, usually you start over. I did not do that because I just couldn't. I have a real hard time with starting over. And so ultimately I kind of fudged it a little bit. Really all it did was the second try at the Elite Four, and I got Ice Beam, and that was done. But yeah, I mean, it was really fun game for me to go back to. I really still find the graphics very charming. Some of the best Pokemon of all time are in there. I do have nostalgia for Generation 1 and 2, but it's not like rose glasses kind of stuff. Like, I know like some of them are still stupid. Like, you can't tell me Voltorb and Electrode aren't kind of dumb. Like, they're just Pokeballs, right? But generally, I mean, a lot of the best Pokemon came from the first few generations, and we've had some great ones since, of course. But I really feel like Heart Gold had some of the best Pokemon, some of the best teams, some of the best characters, some of the best the gym leaders and stuff like that. Plus, of course, you had a lot of post-game content. That was the big appeal for Heart Gold. Excuse me. You also had you could go to the Kanto region. and fight all the original gym leaders. That's actually where my journey stopped. I lost to Sabrina, I think, and I said, fuck it. I got pretty much really far into, like, I beat the main game. At that point, I was in the post game, and I think I got wiped to Sabrina barely or something. I had almost beaten her, and she like took out a couple of my Pokemon, and I started like farming for new ones. But by that point, you're like level 60, and I was like, I just can't. Like, I couldn't justify spending that much time. But I loved it. I mean, it was so good. I'm sure if I played it normally, I would have even gotten more enjoyment. So that's why it's at number 10 for me. Seb, I'm sure you grew up playing this game too. But yeah, this was an amazing experience for me to go back to.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the best Pokemon games. That's one I would recommend to play. I hope they do put it on like the Switch one day, like on an emulator or something, like on the online service. You can play it on your Steam Deck if you emulate it. So I recommend checking it out, no matter how you play it. But yeah, it's one of the best Pokemon games for sure. I also have a Pokemon game on my list, but it's not that one. All right, so my number 10 was very hard. It was between like 7 games, but overall, I chose Bloodborne because Bloodborne is one of the best Souls games. It has one of the best atmospheres, awesome gameplay, amazing soundtrack. All the bosses are very memorable. I just love the whole gothic atmosphere in this game. It's so memorable. It's so fun to play. I platinumed it twice. It's one of the best PlayStation games. We were all waiting for the remake, remaster, or whatever. People are dying for the PC port. We're dying for Bloodborne Kart. It's time for Bloodborne Kart, and it's one of the best PlayStation games easily. It's just everything just about that game is amazing. The lore is amazing. There's so much layers to the lore as any other Souls game from FromSoft and from software, and yeah, it's incredible. So that is my number 10. Dory, what is your number 9?
Sorry about that. Forgot I muted myself. Number 9. This is probably one of the earliest games I played when I got back into video games. I wasn't fully back at this point, but I had heard about this game so much, and it was so like everywhere online. And I think even when I played it, it had been a year or two since it came out. But Undertale, I think, is one of the best narrative games of all time. I love the RPG, the turn-based combat system. I think the writing is superb. There's queer rep, which is a great bonus. Toby Fox did an incredible job with the music, the character design, the personalities of the characters, the boss fights, the different ways that you can go. I already knew about the difference between pacifist and genocide run, so I went for a pacifist run, like straight up, because I don't usually go back over games unless I really like them. And I really do like Undertale. I think this is one of those games where I was like, okay, like, yeah, maybe it's good and maybe I like it, but is it going to be like best of all time? And I think by the time I beat it, I was sobbing, or crying or whatever, because it's just such an excellent experience. It's a really well done look at the genre of RPGs as a whole and turn-based RPGs, and it's a really good commentary. You get a lot of games now that are commentaries on video games, right? Like the Beginner's Guide and games like that, take a look at video games, the Stanley Parable and stuff like that. I feel like Undertale is one of the best games to take kind of a meta look at your choices and at video game choices as a topic, and really make you confront with like what you're doing in this game to other characters, whether they're real or not. I feel like Toby Fox did such a great job with that theme. Obviously, Flowey is one of the best villains of all time, I think. I probably still see that flower in my deep buried in my subconscious somewhere. It's just incredible art design. It's a testament, I think, the fact that people still talk about Undertale, that it's Deltarune was, of course, so hyped up. I did play the first part of Deltarune, but I haven't played the other parts. I'm kind of waiting for it to come all out as one part, so I can just play it. But I keep putting it off at any rate. This is just such an excellent game, and I remember really being relieved that for once, like, the internet really hyped up a game and ended up, for me personally, living up to those expectations. So yeah, I think Undertale is one of the GOATs and definitely one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah, Undertale is one of the best indie games of all time. I beat the first one. It's very memorable. A lot of great characters, cool soundtrack. It's really unique. It's so meta. It's one of the most unique games I've ever played. I got the platinum back on the Vita, I believe. So yeah, it's a great game to pick. I'm about to affect Dory's list because
Oh no,
my number 9 is Kingdom Hearts 2.
you bastard!
Kingdom Hearts 2 is arguably the most iconic PS2 game for me. The gameplay of that game is incredible. I remember begging to stay home from school when it came out. I played that game like nonstop when it came out. My friends and I played it on the PS2 every day for like a long time. I've done multiple playthroughs in that game. Everything about that game is amazing. The story, the gameplay, the music. I love Roxas. He's arguably my favorite character in Kingdom Hearts. It's what can I say? It's absolutely incredible. I love like all the big cinematic moments. I love like the addition of the triangle button and all the cool things you can do with it. I remember the first time I saw it on G4 on when they had like that one show that had like all the compilations and montages of like trailers and stuff. And they played Kingdom Hearts 2 with the theme song, and it had like I think it was the boss battle in the Mulan level, and it just blew me away. I was so hyped for this game. It was one of those games I never. There's very few games that I've ever been that hyped for. Like I couldn't like I was like living it. It's all I was thinking about. Is my entire life when that game came out. I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan and a huge Disney fan, so it was a natural, beautiful combination, right? Kingdom Hearts is one of my favorite series, and Kingdom Hearts 2 is incredible. It's one of the best games of all time, in my opinion. Definitely, arguably the best action RPG of all time. I'm sure Dory agrees. Dory, where did you have it on your list? Because I know you definitely.
You already know where this is on my list. Yeah, this is my number one. It has to be my number one because I have over 300 hours on PS5 for it. A lot of that is speedrunning. Kingdom Hearts is one of the only games besides Remake that I've ever committed substantial time to speedrunning and learning how to speedrun. Yeah, I've talked about this before, but I grew up with Kingdom Hearts. I played Kingdom Hearts 1. I played Kingdom Hearts 2. I played for the Disney characters, not the Final Fantasy characters, since Final Fantasy still gave me flashbacks to trying to play 7 and not succeeding. But I did like those characters as I played, but I mostly played for the Disney characters. Yeah, man, what can I say about Kingdom Hearts 2 that I haven't said before? Specifically the Final Mix version, and even more specifically the 2.5 remastered version. Yeah, I mean, it just has one of the coolest hooks of all time. You're suddenly playing completely different character than Sora. Once you do get to Sora, I think the combat is even better. A lot of the combo modifiers are incredible. A lot of the limits, the forms, all the things that they added in this game. The HD remaster still looks really good. I'd say the only place that doesn't quite age well is maybe the Pirates of the Caribbean world, and that's more so just because it's kind of off-putting how they look very realistic, well, quote-unquote realistic for the time.
Yeah.
And everything else looks very cartoony. It hasn't aged as well, but that's a minor criticism.
I'm not a huge fan of the prologue either. It's my least favorite part when I replay it.
Yeah, some people definitely. The good news is you can beat if you skip through the cutscenes and
yeah, it's not that
everything
long.
else. You know what you're doing. You can do it in like 30 minutes, an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up on it. I played Kingdom Hearts 2. I beat it, but I was really young, so I didn't know about how RPGs work when they were coming to a close. So I ended up playing until like 3 a.m. when I had school the same day. And yeah, there's a lot of post-game content. I feel like this is one of the big things about Kingdom Hearts 2 that doesn't get as much play when people talk about it. Yes, it is one of the best action RPGs, but it also has some of the best post-game content of all time. You can fight so many optional bosses. There are optional challenges. There's critical mode, of course. You can speedrun it if you're really into that, which I was. Kingdom Hearts 2 was a big game for me and for my partner. It's when I was playing it with Ryan, Captain Stubbs, that was definitely the game for him that really convinced him that Kingdom Hearts was a game worth investing his time in. I mean, he enjoyed Kingdom Hearts 1, not so much Chain of Memories, but Kingdom Hearts 2 was, for him, a really excellent RPG. It really holds up, I think, in a lot of ways. I think the Kingdom Hearts franchise in general is something I'm still very much in love with. I mean, I'm not going to show feet on main, but I literally have Kingdom Hearts socks on right now. But yeah, it's such a well-designed game too. You never really hear anybody talking about bugs or glitches with Kingdom Hearts 2. It's really well done. Even the speedrunning community that is usually very diligent about that kind of stuff. I think there's only one known like out of bounds, and that's like post-game content that they made in the final mix, and wasn't in the base game. So that just speaks to how well Square Enix made this game. I could go on and on about it. I think it has some of the best combat, some of the best voice acting. I know some people don't like the story. I think Kingdom Hearts 2 was the perfect mix of overly complicated and very simple. I think that was where they really struck that balance very well.
Very simple and clean.
Very simple and clean. Yep, absolutely. That sometimes, you could say Kingdom Hearts 2 is my sanctuary. I go back to Kingdom Hearts 2 often.
Very nice final mix.
Yes. A couple weeks ago, actually, I went back and I fought some of the optional super bosses, just for fun. And yeah, I mean, it's like getting on a bike again, I mean, maybe it takes a little bit of time and stuff, especially since I play on critical as a default. But yeah, I could talk about Kingdom Hearts 2 forever. I love the game a lot. And there's a reason I have over 300 hours on it. Yeah, I think my record was something like 4.5 hours, and normally you beat that game in like 27, 30. So yeah, I'm very proud of that time. Very, very happy in general with Kingdom Hearts 2. Can honestly say it's a big reason why I made it through 2017. Just a classic game that really does hold up. It's not perfect. I would say the movement in Kingdom Hearts 3 is better, and obviously the graphics are, but that's not particularly fair. Yeah, it's just such a game worth playing. Honestly, if you never play any other Kingdom Hearts game and you're like, oh, well, the lore is stupid, and I don't want to play Kingdom Hearts 1 because it doesn't age very well. Like, just play Kingdom Hearts 2, just jump in. I think most of the things you'll figure out as you go along, and stuff that you don't, you can always ask people about online. But yeah, like I said, I could talk about Kingdom Hearts 2 all day, so I will not do that because we have other games to talk about.
All right, Dory, what is your number 8?
Number 8, this is one of the newer games that I'm going to talk about. I thought about it. He's one of my favorite characters of all time, and this was one of my favorite games of the last year. Spider-Man 2, the one that just came out. I think this is such an incredible realization of the formula of Spider-Man. I loved Spider-Man 1, and I think that they made the side quests even better. The UI is pretty much perfected. The travel system is just perfect, just flawless, honestly, in terms of web swinging, web gliding, and fast travel. I mean, you have so many great options. I think the story is incredible. You can criticize it for rushing itself a little bit towards the end, but even then, I was with it, and I still loved the payoff. Who knew symbiotes were good for couples counseling? I did not, but the more you know. It's just such an incredible game on so many levels. Obviously, graphically, it looks amazing. Insomniac just doesn't really miss when they put out games. I think the credit goes to their team all the way, 100%. They just do banger after banger, and it's never necessarily perfect. Usually it's 8s and 9s. But I mean, I would take a studio that does 8 and 9 after 8 and 9, then a studio that does a bunch of 6s and 7s, and then 110. You know what I mean? It's that consistency for me that really puts Insomniac above the rest. The story is so good, so deep. The character relationships are really well done and built up. There's cool twists. There's a moment in this game that I just made me scream in excitement towards the end, where you get to play a certain character. It's just, I don't know how they're going to top it, but I said the same thing about Miles Morales and Spider-Man, right? I said when Spider-Man came out, I'm like, how are they going to top this? Then they made Miles Morales. I'm like, okay, well, how are they going to top that? And then Spider-Man 2 came out, and I know some people were upset they didn't overhaul the combat as much as maybe some people wanted them to, but I think that they made the gadget system a lot better. I think the combos flow a lot better too. The interactions with the enemies is a little smoother as well. Miles and Peter both feel very similar, but they also feel very different. There's less MJ missions, but they're still there. And when they're not, and when they are, I don't think they're that bad. I never thought they were that bad, honestly, but they're even better here. Like they're completely tolerable. Anybody who gets upset about them, I just don't know what to tell you. She's basically a god, MJ, that is. Yeah, it's just an incredible game. It was one of my favorite games. I could have like little tiny nitpicks about certain aspects. But ultimately, when I play this game, I have discovered that I've run out of honey, and I am a big fan of it. So that was a really stupid reference, but it's one of my favorite lines in the game.
Yeah, it's one of the best superhero games ever. Arguably the best. I would say Arkham City's better, but either way, it's one of the greatest superhero games I've ever.
I was definitely between Arkham City and this. Arkham City is one of my favorite games of all time. I think if I made a top 15, Arkham City would probably be on there. I do love Arkham City a lot.
Easily the best part of the game is the traversal and swinging around. You can do that for hours and just do nothing but swing around and fight crime. But yeah, it's an amazing game. It was in my top 5 games last year. I had a blast with it. I'm excited for Spider-Man 3. Excited for some DLC. Hopefully we get that this year or next year. We'll see whenever the PC port comes as well. So yeah, Spider-Man 2 is a great game. Insomniac is carrying Sony on their back right now. All right, so my number 8, which might overlap with Dory as well, is The Last of Us, the first one.
No, I don't have the first one.
All right,
because we're doing one per franchise.
Gotcha. So the first game is an absolute masterpiece. I've played it. I've beaten it maybe 7 times now, if you include the remake as well. And I'm playing it again on PC and on my Steam Deck. And yeah, it's incredible. The gameplay obviously doesn't age super well, but it's still very fun. But the story and the characters and everything about it, like I don't have to go into detail. Everybody knows at this point. The show came out and it was a big hit with a lot of fans as well.
Yep.
So, but yeah, the characters are amazing. The story is incredible. The performances are incredible. The story, especially the music, the survival horror, like I think all the locations are memorable. Everything about that game is just iconic now at this point. I think in my opinion, it's the greatest PlayStation game of all time. I think a lot of people would agree. I mean, obviously that's subjective, but I think a lot of people would agree with that. And I think it changed Sony forever. I think Sony, ever since then, focused on big cinematic third-person games. I mean, it started with Uncharted 2, but I think this one really solidified it. That's the genre they love the most. And yeah, makes sense, right? Because Last of Us is such a masterpiece that it's one of those like game-changing games. It really changed the industry, like a lot of way people view video games, right? Like video games become like video games were art beforehand, but I think a lot of companies and developers really started to make games like story focused and cinematic and like on this level of movies since The Last of Us. You can make an incredible multi-layered game and story-wise in a video game, and a game like Red Dead Redemption 2 might not be as layered, might be as incredible if not for like The Last of Us, like setting the stage for like games being like that in the future. So The Last of Us is a masterpiece. I mean, everybody knows that at this point. Dory, what do you think about Last of Us?
Yeah, I mean, part of me getting back into video games was because of The Last of Us, falling in love with Ellie. My username on PlayStation is Ellie Can Now Swim. It used to be Ellie Cannot Swim, but then the sequel happened. Spoilers, sorry everybody. I didn't mean to spoil the biggest twist of the second game. Obviously, that one. Anybody here that Pedro Pascal had a really short turnaround on filming? Anyway, no, but I love the first game a lot. Yes, it's true that the gameplay hasn't aged as well, and that's part of why that one's not on my list. Hint, hint. But I love it, adore it. I'm a big sucker for road trip films. I think a lot of people are. It's such an easy plot device to get characters motivated to go to certain situations, have certain situations happen, specific locations happen, a variety of shots and stuff like that. I mean, I know I say shots, but I mean, in this game, it basically is a movie in some aspects. Obviously, the motion capture is incredible. I still think the gameplay is good. It's just a little touch and go.
It's more stiff.
The melee it's a little stiff, a little clunky. I mean, it was made in 2013. I can be forgiving of that, or 20. 13. I think it was 2013. Yes, yeah. 13. I can't believe you remember that instinctively. Yeah, I mean, some of the melee combat's a little finicky, and but the gun gameplay is still really good. And unless you're playing on grounded, those little small things are never really going to matter. There's so many great characters in this game, such incredible writing from Naughty Dog. Characters that I love. I'm trans, and I picked Doreen as my name, but Ellie was definitely my backup name that I thought about for a while because I love Ellie as a character a lot. Then the second game happened, and I'm like, maybe I'm good on that name. No, I still actually love the name, and still my second favorite name that I would have picked for myself. But it's such a like awesome experience, and the ending is such a gut punch. I really feel like the TV show, for the most part, not perfect either, but really adapted a lot of that emotionality and that relationship between Joel and Ellie so well. I adore The Last of Us, and it is one of my favorite games of all time. If we weren't doing one per franchise, this still might be in my list, even though I have some issues with the gameplay.
Yep, and multiplayer was so incredible as well that people were dying for a sequel, and Factions unfortunately got canceled. So that's one of the underrated things about Last of Us. As incredible as the story is, the multiplayer is just as memorable for a lot of people. So it's an amazing game. I really wish Part 2 had multiplayer as well, but it didn't. All right, Dory, what is your number 8? Oh,
my number 8.
Did you read it?
Number 7. Number 7. Yeah, I was just about to say.
Yeah, what's
number
your
7? Another recent game is God of War 2 Ragnarok. I grew up playing the God of War games. I played 1 as well as some of 2. I never got around to 3. I still haven't gone back and played it, but I do want to at some point. So I've always loved the God of War series. Once they kind of said that we're going to do a more mature bit of storytelling, and it's not just going to be mash and gore and sex, and it's not going to be as edgy, basically. Edgy for edginess sake. I love Kingdom Hearts, so I love me some edgy here and there in terms of character designs and whatnot. But I think this is such a perfect pairing to the first game. For me, I love both games. The only reason I say the second game over the first game is honestly they just improved on the combat and they made the menu system a little bit better, a little less clunky. That's really it. I don't honestly see that meaningful of a difference between the first two. I'm sure there are people who disagree with that, but I think the sequel is pretty much perfect in terms of its storytelling, in terms of its graphics, its gameplay. I think the character development between Atreus and Mr. God of War himself is so perfectly done between these two games, but really reaches a crescendo here. I will say also a minor gripe with the first game is when Atreus gets all, we're gods and we're better than everyone else. It's interesting the first time around, but when you go back to it and you watch those scenes and it's like he's so whiny and annoying. And I know he's a kid, right? So it's not a big deal, but it does get annoying because he's such a little shit. Which he's supposed to be, right? That's what they're going for. But they're too good at it. Santa Monica needs to calm down on their writing because they're too good. But yeah. And the DLC was really great too. The DLC for Valhalla was basically a roguelike, and I loved it, which is rare because I'm not usually into roguelikes, but it reminded me a lot of Hades, obviously with the God connection too. Just a big fan of that too. So yeah, I'm not sure what else there is to say about Ragnarok. There's just so many awesome cinematic fights that just make you go wow. And the combat itself is so solid, so fun, simple enough. It's definitely one of those games that's like simple to learn but difficult to master.
Yeah, 2018 is more iconic to me, but I think Ragnarok's a better game. It just has that sequel, like I don't know how to word it. It's a sequel, so it kind of looks is viewed down a lot worse than the first game because the first game did it so well the first time, and it changed the series in a whole new direction. And it won Game of the Year in 2018. That like obviously the sequel is only thing it could do is do the same formula and just do it better. So obviously the
Yes.
first game is more iconic, but Ragnarok's an amazing game. It has a lot of amazing gameplay elements. It's so much fun. The story is incredible. The performances are incredible. The scenery is incredible. The music's amazing. It's one of the best games of 2022. It would have been my game of the year if not for Elden Ring, but it was absolutely mind blowing. I had a blast with it. I'm a huge God of War fan. It's my favorite franchise of all time, and for PlayStation, and it was Ragnarok was a worthy sequel, and I'm excited to see what they do with the third game, or if they do an Atreus DLC or standalone game. That's the rumor. Oh, maybe next year. So we'll see. But yeah, Ragnarok's a great choice. A great game. All right, for me, number 7 is The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, which is arguably the greatest game ever. A lot of people temptly put that game on number one on list or number 2 or whatever. It's always in that area, and I think it's one of the few games that like got 10 out of 10 by like everybody. But that was back in the 90s though, different reviewing styles. And Ocarina of Time is amazing. It's absolutely iconic. Of course, it's one of the first games everybody thinks of when they think of Nintendo. It's one of the first 3D games. It's one of the it's I think it's the first time Zelda was 3D, and everything about that game is amazing. I mean, pretty much a lot of things about that game are amazing for the time. Obviously, it doesn't age as well because it's a Nintendo 64 game, but at the time, the whole story was incredible. The adventure, the gameplay was a lot of fun. It was very innovative. It it's one of the earliest games I remember. I was 5 years old when it came out. I rented it from Blockbuster. It's one of my introduction to video games in terms of like story. Like, oh, this a game can have a masterful story, and I love Ganondorf, the whole story of time travel and the ocarina and saving Zelda, and there's some elements of the game that don't age as well, especially like the dungeons, like the water temple is very tedious and annoying and a lot confusing, but overall it is one of the greatest games ever, arguably the greatest game ever, and if not for another game I'm going to mention later. This was a game that really got me into Nintendo. Like this game really was a major factor in my life. Like it really changed me as a gamer. It introduced me to like video games can be in a story. Like video games can be a masterpiece. Even at a very young age, I'm like, yeah, this game is absolutely amazing. Everybody has fond memories of it. Like the very first title screen, like as soon as it comes on, you hear the Epona like galloping, and you hear the music come on. It's like, yeah. That's so iconic. So, yeah, what do you think about that game, Dory? Did you play it?
Seb wants to put me on blast like I knew he was going to. All right, everybody. Pitchforks and torches at the ready. I skipped over it. I played Majora's Mask. I'm sorry, okay? Look, and I never played the DS game. I don't know why.
Majora's Mask is great, though.
But I played Majora's Mask and I never played this. I don't know why, and I don't know why I never went back to it. And I had an N64. Maybe I didn't even know it existed at the time. Maybe I was just a dumb kid. I don't know. Yeah, I've never played it, so I can't comment that much. I do know about LOL Water Temple. But other than that, yeah, I can't say a lot because I haven't gone back and played it. And I didn't play the DS remake. I would love if they would do a remake for the Switch or something. I think that would be awesome. With them doing Thousand Year Door now, maybe they'll do something eventually. I know these are different franchises and stuff like that, but different studios and whatever. Well, it's both Nintendo, but anyway, different characters. Maybe that's unrealistic, but I would love that. That would definitely get me to play it. I'm not going to go hunt down a DS to go play it, nor am I not. I'm definitely not going to hunt down an N64. Well, and I'm also not going to emulate it. So,
You could, yeah. I
That's
mean,
where I'm at.
they do have it on Nintendo Online if you have a
That's right. That's
subscription.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So Dory, what is your number 6?
All right. Number 6. Number 5, number 6 are really tough for me. But I'll talk about number 6 first, obviously. When let's see, it was last year, I believe. It was the summer, and Seb was like, "Hey, I just bought Baldur's Gate 3. Think you'd really love it. You should give it a try." I'm like, Seb, it's $60, and like I don't know anything about this game. Yeah, I love D&D, and yeah, I've been playing it since 2019. But I mean, like, and then it's the SpongeBob narrator. 150 hours later. All right, it's pretty good. Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 is one of my favorite games of all time, which is incredible. I mean, it just came out last year, but I don't think there's really not a lot of debate for me that this is one of the best games of all time. The writing, the combat, the character designs, the just everything. The amount of content in this game is incredible. It's a really dense, thick, well explained with great lore. It's just like what an RPG, a CRPG should be on such a massive scale. I put over 100 hours into it. I love it dearly. I played a human rogue because I'm a boring person. And I was pretty much a goody two shoes. I think every now and then I did something maybe iffy, but mostly that was like chaotic stuff than evil stuff. And that's because of my disrespect for authority. But you don't generally have too many opportunities to do stuff like that anyway. I was pretty much a goody two shoes throughout most of it. Yeah, I mean, it was such an incredible journey. I played, I think, for the entirety of August, so for like 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. I do recommend this game, but make sure that you kiss your loved ones goodbye. I'm not going to say too much, but I am going to say I had to make my partner a whole day about her after I was done with this game. Now every time I start up a new video game, she's kind of hoping it's the next Baldur's Gate, just so I do that again. But yeah, just the voice acting, the writing, the combat, and the dedication to the community too is so important. I mean, the way that they have given and given and given and given and given in terms of fixing bugs, fixing crashes, adding to the cutscenes at the end, giving them more explanation. I just think Larian in general has done a tremendous job with this game. And I'm very happy that I got to experience it and that Seb recommended it to me, because honestly, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if I would have played it if Seb hadn't given me his recommendation.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 is my game of the year last year. It's masterpiece, top to bottom. It was in my top 10. I take it in, I put it in, and take it out, put it in, take it out. So it could have easily been made my list. It's one of the best games I ever played. It was mind blowing. Every character in that game is voice acted. Every little detail is focused on. Like, I've never seen a game with that much detail in my life. Every story, there's so many story elements, so many things you can do, so many scenarios, so many just fun ways to tackle a problem, tackle a boss, tackle like I had talked about like when I was dealing with the Dark Elf lady, like I shot the bridge and made her fall to her death. Like I didn't know you could do that, and it's just an awesome way. Or if you want to like team up with her, you can do that and be evil, and you have so many avenues you go. Like you can do so many things. You can have a totally different playthrough than somebody else. It's so incredible. Like the fact that I was like a dark elf and I can just like walk in the goblin camp and they all like worship me or were scared of me because I was a dark elf, and changed the whole dynamic of someone that plays a human character and goes to goblin camp. They have to handle it a totally different way. It's there's so much replay value in that game. You can play that game for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, even though it's a single player game. It has multiplayer elements in it, but it's not an MMO or anything. And it goes to show you how incredible the layers, like how great of an RPG it is that you can put 1,000 hours in this game and have a totally different playthrough each time, because there's so many layers to this game, and it's an absolute masterpiece. It's one of my greatest. It's in my top 20 for sure. It's one of the greatest games ever made. It might make me. I played it. If I play it again, it might probably would make my top 10. It's an absolute masterpiece. I always liked Baldur's Gate, the 1 and 2, but I didn't love it like this one did. Like this one really brought me into the series, like for sure. And I knew Dory would love it, and that's why I recommended it to her. And but even then, I didn't expect this game to be what it was. Like I didn't expect it to like be Game of the Year, like be one of the highest rated games of all time. And it was. It's arguably the greatest PC game ever. And I know it's on consoles now, but I think of it as a PC game, and I think it's It's probably you could make a case that it's the art. It has a higher Metacritic score than Half-Life 2, which people consider the greatest PC game. So, yeah, it's a masterpiece. All right, before we continue, this is our ad break. So, Dory, take it away.
This episode is sponsored by everyone's favorite feral goth girl, Gogo, the game mistress. Gogo is a professional GM and geek event organizer. She's an award-winning cosplayer, published author, voice actor, and general menace to civil society. Gogo has professional experience running D&D, Pathfinder, World of Darkness, Fate, Lancer, Thirsty Sword Lesbians, Warhammer 40k RPGs, and over 30 other systems for cons, companies, and private tables. If you pay her enough, she'll even run Fatal. You can hire her as the game mistress for your online tabletop group over at startplaying.games/gamemistress. That's startplaying.games/gamemistress. The link is in the description, along with her link tree. Mention our show to GoGo to get $5 off your first 5 sessions.
My number 6 is Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 is the greatest horror game ever made. It's the greatest survival horror game ever made. It changed. I think it's one of the earliest games to ever have a multi-layered story. Ever. I mean, it came out in 2001, and the themes it tackles, like sexual abuse, body shit, like feeling bad about your body, depression, sexual frustration, everything. Like there's so many layers to that game. Every character has a layer to them, especially James. And it has one of the greatest twists ever. It has a great atmosphere. It has awesome monsters and designs. All the designs are intentional. They're all feminine for a reason. There's a whole reason why Pyramid Head is masculine, and I just love analyzing that game. I can write you a whole dissertation on that game. It's absolutely incredible. I have a PhD in Silent Hill 2. I've written articles and essays about this game. There's so much depth and layers to this game that I think anyone that likes this genre is going to absolutely fall in love with this game immediately. Obviously, the controls don't age as well. It's tanky controls. And don't play the remastered version. Play the original on an emulator, because they screwed it up with the remaster. They had to change all the voice acting, and it's not the same. The fog doesn't look as good, and it's just a mess. Please play the original version, and it's really accessible anyway. Get it on, play the emulator on PC. But Silent Hill 2 is one of the greatest games ever. Like I said, I think most people consider it like the greatest horror game ever time. It's usually in the top 3 on people's list. It's a mind-blowingly amazing game, and I'm excited for the remake. I don't think the remake's going to live up to the original, of course, because it just doesn't age as well. If it came out today, I think the people would fall in love with the story, but they would not love the gameplay, and that would get criticized for that. But for the time, absolutely incredible. I was probably way too young to be playing that game because the themes that it has in it, it's very adult, and it's gonna go over your head. You have to really think about it. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out, but it's like you have to analyze it. You have to put yourself in that English major kind of mindset where you have to analyze why are they doing that specific thing or that specific character. Why is that specific element in the story happening? And I love that stuff because I'm an English major. I'm an English teacher. I love analyzing things. I love looking at the details, and it's mind-blowingly amazing. So yeah, Silent Hill 2 is my number 6. So top 5 games of all time. So my top 5 is very, very solid. It never changes, and it never will. Probably never will. I've had the same top 5 forever, and so I can definitely say this is my definitive top 5 games of all time. like something would have to really change my life for it to crack my top 5 now. So Dory, what is your number 5?
My number 5. Um, I would say that this is no disco, this ain't no party, but it is in fact a disco. It's a Disco Elysium. One of my favorite games of all time. Sucks that anything else further from the studio I will probably never play or even look at because capitalism, basically. You can go. There's a whole documentary on what happened to the studio, ZAUM or ZOM or whatever you want to call them. But the game itself, for what it was, has I keep saying the same stuff. Like, this is such a unique art style. It's such a unique game. It's very philosophical. It's very. The reason I picked, by the way, I picked Disco Elysium over Baldur's Gate is because although Disco Elysium and Baldur's Gate are similar levels of masterfulness or excellence, Disco Elysium's a lot more playable. It's a lot easier to recommend Disco Elysium because the UI is simpler. I think pretty much all the payoffs are universally interesting, at least the ones I got, and well written and so on. Whereas it's harder to recommend Baldur's Gate because it is such a long game, because it is such a dense game. Now, don't get me wrong, Disco Elysium is dense as well, but it's one of those open world games, where it's very dense. Pretty much every building you can go into, and it has multiple floors or multiple things you can interact with, or people you can have multiple kinds of conversations with. It just builds and builds and builds on itself. And it's, it's such a unique experience because of the characters, because of the dialogue. Making that call at the payphone with the detective is one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever seen in a game. Gosh, I don't know. I hope no one's literally been there, but the general feelings of unrequited love and heartbreak and self-pity just really struck with me. The gameplay itself, I mean, is mostly investigating. You're not really playing this for the action. The combat's not necessarily. There is combat, and it's only really saved for, I think, 2, maybe 3 situations in the entire game. And that really makes it feel like it's something special, something tense. I have done the ending portion of this game quite a few times, and it always feels tense, even when I know what's going on, even when I played the Final Cut edition, which has everything voice acted, which is just incredible. There's like 1 million words in this game, and I'm not even exaggerating. Like, I don't mean like 1 million or something. I mean, like, there literally is like more than 1 million words or lines or whatever they said about in this game. There's just so much. It's based on a novel. It's incredible work across the board. It can be a little technical at times, and maybe there's a little bit of a sort of barrier to entry with what the game is trying to get at, and with what the game. I mean, it's a very adult game for starters, and discusses very many, high level kind of topics. I'm not doing that fucking stupid Rick and Morty meme where it's like you need a high IQ to understand it. I'm just saying, like, it can be tricky at first for some folks, but I think it does explain itself well enough that most people, can understand it. It's a grisly game. It's a hard game at times to go through, but I think this is definitely one of those games too that really, really rewards you for failing, not just succeeding, but failing. Failing is not just part of the game. It's expected and encouraged to some extent because that leads to really cool results. And the same thing in Baldur's Gate as well. But I feel like it's done even better here because of the slightly smaller scope of Disco Elysium.
Yes, Disco Elysium is a great game. Just be prepared to read a lot.
Yes.
It's like
get ready
basically
to
a novel.
learn the English language, buddy.
Yeah, it's basically like a novel because like there's paragraphs and paragraphs of text, which I don't mind. It was an amazing game. I beat it. It was one of those games as well. It was different endings and different scenarios, and people can have different playthroughs of how they tackle it. But it's like Dory said, it's just as layered as Baldur's Gate, but it's not as long. Of course, it's more accessible. It's like I mean, it's not like you don't have to put 50 hours into it or anything like that. So yeah, it's an amazing game. It's one of the best PC games of all time. I think you can make a case top 5 of all time PC games for sure, even though it's on consoles as well. All right. My number 5 is, speaking of PC, is World of Warcraft. Now, World of Warcraft,
Oh wow.
growing up, was the biggest game in the world. It was a Fortnite. Everybody I knew played it. Every single person. Like it was gigantic. It changed the MMO genre forever. Everybody wanted to beat it, and they always failed. It was the biggest game. It is the most played game. It's the game I put the most hours into. I put thousands and thousands and thousands of hours into this game. I've been playing this game since I was 11 years old, 2004. It came out in 2004. I was 11, right in 6th grade, and I've been playing it on and off to this day. I haven't played it in a while now because I just kind of fell off now. It just doesn't have the same esteem to me. But historically, everything about this game is amazing. It was very accessible. You didn't need a high end PC to play it. The lore is amazing. The soundtrack's amazing. I love the little cartoony animation. I love just hanging out with your friends, being in a guild, getting on a raid with your friends, fighting over who's getting the loot. It's I'm a huge MMO fan, and when I think of MMOs, the first game I think of, it's the definitive MMO. It's the game. It's still people, millions of people still play it. It's still a big game. It's not as big as it used to be, of course, but it's still a massive game. I love the Warcraft franchise. I really wish we get another game in that franchise. And yeah, I've put in 10,000 hours, something like that, in this game. Like, I've put so much hours in this game. It's just one of those games you get. Maybe not so much nowadays because Activision got greedy and they make it like a chore and a full time job to play it now. But I always felt like I could just jump into it anytime I want, make a new character, and just have fun for a couple hours and get off. I mean, there's always a grind. It's MMO, of course, but I always felt like it's one of those games I can always, if I ever got in the mood to play it, just jump into it and play it. It's incredible. I kind of miss it in a sense. There's just no one I know really plays it anymore. In fact, you kind of get roasted nowadays if you played it with people I know. So yeah, it's one of the best games ever. I think it's in the top 5 PC games of all time. I think it revolutionized the whole genre completely. It's the last big genre. I think MMO, because I think MMO's kind of fallen off now. I think people typically prefer like the service games like Fortnite and Apex and stuff nowadays. MMOs are just not. They don't have the same stand. They don't have that same like luster as they used to do. Obviously, 14 is doing well and all that, but not the same. So yeah, the Warcraft, incredible. So all right, number 4, Dory. What is your number 4?
Number 4. Number 4 for me is it's kind of a game that came out a long time ago, but also kind of not. Mass Effect 2, Legendary Edition. Specifically Legendary Edition because they did some quality of life stuff and remastered it. It's just the best version of the game, so I just picked the best version. So I love the Mass Effect series. I think the Citadel DLC is one of the best DLCs of all time throughout history ever. And Mass Effect 2 for me has the best gameplay and best story. I think you could argue about whether Mass Effect 3 had the better gameplay. I'm not sure. I think that's arguable. Definitely didn't have the better story for me. But yeah, I love those characters a lot. There's just such a great interplay between the characters and the ship. It's such a perfect blend of side quests, especially with the DLC. That's also why I picked the remastered version, because it has all that DLC. It is just such a great experience for anybody, really. I feel like they did not a lot, but a good amount of upgrading for the first one. But for the second one, I mean, they largely left alone, besides incorporating the DLC into one package so that you don't have to buy anything, which is just awesome. Such a great deal for people. I'm not sure what else to say, really. Mass Effect is a game that I've played a lot in my life, 2 or 3 times maybe, which for me is a lot. I don't usually go back and play games because we only have so much time, and unless the game's really a comfort game for me, like Kingdom Hearts 2 or something, I don't usually do that. Or like a game I want to speedrun. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything to add about that. This is such an individualized game too, because obviously your choices impact what happens with the story. So it's hard to say specifically like what's so great about the game story wise, because your choices kind of really matter. But yeah, I don't know if this is on your list, Seth, but it's definitely high up on mine.
It's not in my top 10 list, but Mass Effect 2 is one of the greatest games of all time. I totally recommend to everybody. It's arguably the greatest science fiction space game of all time. It's one of the greatest RPGs of all time. It's one of the best 360 games or PS3 games. It's an amazing game. It has great characters, great story. I love that it connects to the first game. Like your playthrough matters through all the games, and the dialogue's incredible. It's my kind of genre. I love like RPGs. We make dialogue choices, and when your choices matter. And Mass Effect did that so really well, and Shepard's such an awesome character. And yeah, Mass Effect 2 is incredible. I have it in my top 30 list for sure. It's one of the great. I absolutely love it. But yeah, I didn't put it in my top 10. So that's a good choice. For me, number 4 is Pokemon Red. Pokemon is very special to me. It is one of my favorite franchises ever. My top 3 favorite franchises ever. It changed my life. When I came out in '98 in America, I had Pokemon everything, Pokemon costumes and curtains and card games, blankets, and everything you can think of. Pokemon just took over the world, took over America, took over my whole generation. When people think '90s kids, they think Pokemon. It's one of the first things people think of. Pokemon and Beanie Babies at that time, and Pokemon Red is I don't know if it's how I got into the series. I think I got into the series by seeing the trailer to the show. It was like it was like a live action like commercial selling me on the show, and then the game came out at the same time, and then I played up Pokemon Red on my Game Boy, and the rest is history. I was 5 years old. I was playing the trading card game. I was beating adults in tournaments at 5 years old. No, not even exaggerating. I was kind of a prodigy at the card game. I'm very good at card games, and in terms of the game itself, I played it so much. I've beaten that game so many times. It's probably my most beaten RPG ever. It's not my first RPG, which is the next game I'm going to talk about, but it is my most beaten RPG. I can play that game even to this day, and have a blast playing it. I mean, I usually go to is Fire Red instead, but this game is so iconic to me, and for so many reasons, because Pokemon has been such a major factor in my life that it has to make my top 5. Pokemon Red changed my life as a gamer. It really, I was obsessed with Pokemon. I still love Pokemon to this day. I love Pokemon, but back then though, man, that was a game changer. And Pokemon Red, I like Pokemon Red better than Blue, because even though Blue's my favorite color, because I love Charizard. Charizard is my favorite Pokemon of all time. I just love dragons. He's not even a dragon, but I love dragons. And I love Charmander. So Red was always my go-to. I played. It's not a funny thing enough. It's not my favorite Pokemon game. Like, even though it's my favorite, it's just kind of weird. It's like my 4th favorite game of all time, but it's not my favorite Pokemon game. But because it had a huge impact on me, I have to put it in my top 5. Because yeah, like I said, it changed my life as a gamer. It's one of my first introductions to like a serious RPG. Even though I don't want to say it's super serious, but you get what I'm saying. So Dory, what is your number 3?
Oh, I did want to say a couple things briefly about Red.
Good.
It's not on my list, but obviously I grew up playing it. Seb and I are similar age. I loved Pokemon Red when I was younger. I played Red and I played Yellow. Then I played Silver and so on and so forth. Up until Diamond, and then I took a long break. Yeah, I mean, such a classic game. There's so many great things that we got from that. I loved the anime. I tried to get into the card game, but unlike Seb, I was trash and nobody wanted to play with me. So the UI is very bad now. I mean, it's heavily outdated, but there is such a fondness for it that I think is completely fair. And wanted to kind of sentimentally agree with Seb here.
Yes, it's
All right.
one of the most replayable games ever. Go ahead, Dory. What's number 3?
Number 3, RE4 Make. I talked about this earlier. There's not a lot to say here. I didn't pick the original just because the gameplay is a little clunkier and obviously the graphics aren't quite as nice because it's not the RE engine.
Mm-hmm.
But I had such a fun time with this. I put about 70-ish hours in it. I did speed run it. I think I got it down to 2 hours 15 minutes on not beginner, but I'm using Kingdom Hearts terminology. Easy, whatever you want to call it. I forget what it's called. But I love RE4. I played it on PlayStation, GameCube, the Wii.
I think it's called Assisted.
Assisted, yes. PS4, Wii, and PS5.
The remake?
I played it on just about it.
The original.
The original. The original. I played it on just about everything. I don't think I played the original on PS5, but PS4 I definitely did. The remastered version. It's it's such a the original is such a classic title, but it is a little outdated and stiff in its controls. I love the mix of humor and horror here. I love horror comedies. Big fan of them when done right. Like Shaun of the Dead is one of my favorite horror films of all time, and one of my favorite one of the best comedy films of all time, as well. So yeah, I don't know that I have a ton to say about this because what can I really say about RE4 that hasn't been said before?
We already talked about it last week as well.
Right, and we talked about it recently on top of it in detail. So I don't think there's too much to say here. Y'all know already why Seb and I both love this game.
Exactly. I'll talk about that coming up. Number 3 for me is Final Fantasy VII. I've talked about Final Fantasy VII in detail on this podcast. We talked about Rebirth for 3 weeks in a row. We went full detail. So I won't go too detailed. But 7 is my first RPG ever. It's so iconic. Characters and the story and the music. It's my favorite soundtrack of all time. Absolutely fantastic. If you played Rebirth now in the remake, you know the soundtracks I'm talking about because they just remastered it. And so yeah, the soundtrack is my favorite of all time. I'm so excited for part 3 to see what they do with part 3 and the remake. Final Fantasy 7 I've beaten like 6 times. I can't say it ages well, but I still would recommend it if you never played it before because it's so iconic and it's one of those major games that changed PlayStation. It changed the industry because if PlayStation didn't get Final Fantasy 7 on the platform, I still think Sony would be very successful, but I think it really made an impact on what console people bought because that was big news when Square Enix decided to work with Sony instead of Nintendo because Final Fantasy was always a Nintendo series prior to Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 7 just an absolutely iconic game. So I've talked about it in detail, so I'm not going to go too much. I'm not going to say any more about it, but yeah, it's an amazing game. All right, number 2, Dory.
Yes, number 2, the only game I haven't talked about so far. So my honorary number 1, no. The Last of Us Part 2. This is one of those games that I love deeply, and I don't think I can ever go back to. I've tried to multiple times to go back to it. I think the last time I played it was when Mitch and I had that trivia speedrunning thing. It's just such a hard game to go back to knowing the whole story, and it's such a brutal game, and it's such a beautiful game. But that's part of what makes it really hard to go back to for me. I didn't go back to it when they updated it. I didn't go back to it when they gave it DLC. I don't think anything's ever going to get me to go back to it. Short of adding some kind of new ending or something. It's such a special game for me. I just felt like I was in Nirvana the whole entire time I was playing it. I think I cried. One of the only times I cried playing the game was when I actually started playing, and this never happened before. When I started playing the game, I actually started like tearing up because I couldn't believe it. Like I was really playing the sequel to one of my favorite games of all time, and it was such a beautiful moment. Now, yes, I know some people don't like some of the story decisions. Some of the people don't like what they did with some of the characters. I understand that. I understand that they're divisive choices. For me, one of the biggest issues I have with it is some of the political allegories that Neil Druckmann apparently thinks are going on in this game. But that's more of a niche complaint that most people don't have. Look, I'm fine with pretty much all the decisions they made. Are they all the choices I would have made? No, but I think that overall they work beautifully. And you could definitely say that this game goes on a little too long, but for me, I just couldn't get enough of it. I was glad when I still had more to go, but I understand that's a divisive element of it as well. It's just a phenomenal game, and I'm confident we're going to get The Last of Us Part 3 at some point to finish off Ellie's story. I do not believe Druckmann and the team are going to leave it there. My support for Naughty Dog as a company is kind of at an all-time low relatively to where it used to be. Certainly to where it used to be. But I'm still very excited for Last of Us Part 3 and very excited for them to close out that story. I think they can do a beautiful trilogy here. Seb and I have talked about The Last of Us Part 2 in detail in many different places. I don't really feel like I could do it justice right now, but just to say that it's a special game for me. And it's not a game I feel like I could ever go back to because it's that special. So it's a weird relationship with that game for me. But luckily, a lot of the internet has a weird relationship with that game. Unluckily, it's a very bad, weird relationship. So anyway, for me, it's a very positive outlook on this game, but I understand the criticisms, and I don't fault people for preferring the first game, for sure.
Yes, it's my game of the year in 2020. I think it's a masterpiece. I do think it's the best game in 2020, and I think 2020 was very loaded. So that's saying a lot. It's an amazing game. I like the first game better because I like the story better in the first game. I think the second game has pacing issues. I just beat it recently this year with the remaster that came out, and it still had the pacing. The pacing issues are still there. I think there's some weird story decisions that I didn't care for. Like there's levels in that game I don't feel like they should have took it out or cut it down a little bit, especially with the dad and everything. I felt like the chapter just dragged. I'm not a fan of levels where you're just like walking and talking. Like it's like most of the chapter is just like walking and talking, and it suffers there. And the ending, I still have mixed feelings about the ending because I don't know if I could forgive her at the end. And I understand why people feel unsatisfied with the ending after everything she went through, but at the end of the day, it's an amazing game. I think it's the greatest third-person shooter of all time in terms of gameplay. I think the gameplay is the best of all time. It's just so fluid. So many things you can do. I love how all the NPCs interact with each other. Like they all when they're trying to strategize how to beat Ellie. And then you kill one of their partners and they grieve. You can hear them grieve over their partner. Like very few games have ever had that layer against actual NPCs. Like when you actually kill somebody, it feels like it really feels like you killed somebody. And the story is still amazing. It's just I just have some issues with it. And I understand why people. I think the game suffered from the leaks because people had a lot of things out of context. A lot of people thought it was Ellie's mom. People thought she was trans, or people thought they were making all these scenarios like Joel's still alive. The trailer tricks people. The trailer did trick people into thinking Joel was alive. Spoiler. Yeah, it's an amazing game. It just suffered from the leak, and I think a lot of people just had a bad impression of it, and I think people just say a lot of bad things for clout as well. I think they're trying to. I think they jump on the trend. I'm not saying everybody. Some people just genuinely don't like it, and that's okay, for sure. But there are people I generally don't feel like that's their genuine opinion. I feel like they're just saying that for internet points, brownie points, which I talked about
so
before.
They can also go against the wokeness or whatever, as if Ellie wasn't already gay anyway.
Yeah, it wasn't even that woke of a game. I thought there's some gay, gay characters, and of course there's kissing and stuff, but it wasn't preaching at all, really. It was very bloodthirsty. Brutal game.
For me personally, I don't know. I don't really care about that stuff. I think that generally people just use woke as a blanket term just to stuff they don't
lost meaning now. It's just overused.
Yeah. Yeah,
'Cause,
well,
like
I don't even know if it had any good meaning to begin with, but anyway, it's a side combo.
yeah, but
Um,
it's like Lev is like a trans character, but like it didn't like preach anything. It's like Lev is just a trans character, and that's it. Like it
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
try to do it doesn't try to like do anything else besides that. So anyway,
yeah,
yeah, it's a great game. It's my game of the year in 2020. All right, so my
yeah.
next two games, I'm not going to go in detail because I already talked about it in detail on this podcast. We talked about my second game, Super Mario 64, on with the podcast episode. We talked about Mario Day. Mario 64 is my first game. It's the first game I ever played on a console. It introduced me to video games basically. It's not my first video game ever because I did play like Putt Putt and the Jumpstart Kindergarten on the PC and stuff. But like in terms of like actual console game where I sat down and beat when I was little, I started playing when I was 3 years old. It's Super Mario 64. So it's my first real video game, and it's my very first 3D game. Because that game revolutionized the camera angles, right? It had a 360 view, right? You can manipulate the camera like never before. The levels are all memorable. Music's memorable. It's iconic. What can I say? Like people know this game really well. I've beaten this game many times on the 64 and the DS remake, and it's so memorable to me. I mean, it's one of those games, as I've said multiple times in this list, changed my life. It changed me as a gamer. It's incredible. So yeah, that's my number two. Number one was for Dory was Kingdom Hearts 2. So, and obviously, what a big surprise! My number one is Resident Evil 4. It's the GOAT. As I say all the time, it's the GOAT. It's the greatest game of all time, in my opinion. Resident Evil 4, the original, I've beaten 26 to 27 times or something like that on every platform it's ever been on. I talk about it a lot. Of course, it doesn't age as well. The gameplay is stiffer because it came out in 2005. But I still think you can play it today and have a blast. I love action hero Leon. I just love how like all his one-liners. I love, even though it's more of an action game, there is a lot of awesome horror elements in it. Like there's the chainsaw guy and the Caradors are scary. And when I first played the game when I was 12, I rented it from Blockbuster, and it was hard the first playthrough. Like I died a lot. There was a lot of tough sections, like the mining level. The village section, right, is overwhelming in the beginning. Obviously nowadays I've beaten so many times, it's like it's a joke now, but at the time it was overwhelming. And I remember seeing like clips on IGN. This is like 2005, back when the IGN would like there was no YouTube, really. YouTube was still starting out, so you had to rely on IGN's streaming videos to get gaming clips. They would have the big IGN logo in the corner. And I watched someone playing the village section in the beginning, and I was just totally blown away. I mean, I was already a big Resident Evil fan by this point, but it was like, wow, I've never seen this before in a game. And yeah, it changed the genre forever. Third-person shooters, after that game came out, everybody copied it, and they perfected it, like Last of Us Part 2. Perfected it, right? Like Resident Evil 4 walks so like Last of Us Part 2 could run, or Dead Space, right, like that. Resident Evil 4 is to me the greatest game ever made, so I absolutely love it. I talk about it all the time. It's a masterpiece. 10 out of 10. All right, so that is our top 10 list of all time. Very hard to do. We probably should do another top 10 list, like our 11 to 20 at some point in the future. Because I have a lot of games I didn't talk about as well. But I'm very happy with this list. The bottom two I can easily change out for like 5 other games. I can make a case for so many games. But my top 7, I feel like, or even top 8, very solid. I don't think they're ever going to change. Those games are so impactful in my life at 30 years old that I'm not sure that would ever change. But yeah. So I'm very happy with how my list turned out. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really good list. I think maybe I could have taken out HeartGold or Undertale, but I'm very happy with those games being there. I think it adds some much needed diversity too in slightly older games as well.
Yeah.
So I am happy they made the cut. I don't think number one's ever going to change unless Kingdom Hearts 4 comes out and somehow blows that out of the water. But I don't think that's true. We're not at the height of the Tokyo team's powers anymore, like we were when KH2 and KH2 FM came out. But I can hope and I can dream. That's the only thing I think that would ever replace Kingdom Hearts 1 is Kingdom Hearts 4, or Kingdom Hearts 2 is Kingdom Hearts 4, or something equivalent to. I agree with you. I don't ever really see anything beating Disco Elysium. And I don't ever see anything really replacing Mass Effect 2 or RE4. So I think my top 5 is pretty much a lock. I doubt anything would take, the rest of them either. But I mean, I could see something beating Ragnarok or Spider-Man 2. Sequels for those games especially could replace them if they improve on the formula even more. But, yeah, I'm pretty happy with my list overall as well.
Yeah, I'm clearly a 90s kid. I have a lot of 90s representation here. I have several 2000s representation here. I got two 2010s games. I left Elden Ring and Baldur's Gate 3 out, but they're very honorable mentions. So I think I'm very happy because I hit on every era of my life. But I think I chose the games that are the most impactful for me, like the ones that really introduced me to gaming. Because obviously when a lot of these games came out, I was very little, but I played them so many times, even after they came out throughout my life in multiple playthroughs, that they've had a huge impact on me. So yeah, I'm very, very happy with this list. All right, so thanks for watching. We'll see what happens next week. It's very limited. This week was very limited with news and everything. There was nothing to talk about. So I think this is a perfect episode to do something special. So we'll see what happens next week. So I won't say what we're going to talk about, but next week we'll probably be back to normal in terms of actual topics and stuff like that. So you have a good weekend. Rest of your weekend. Enjoy WrestleMania. And peace.
Yeah.
Bye.
Go finish that story, Cody.